Jack Merton, a 73-year-old naval veteran, spent his entire life in a small coastal town, crabbing on his own boat, the Wind Mercy. When a millionaire's luxury yacht destroyed his vessel, the community was silent at first, but then the Navy, the town, and Jack's grandson proved that memory, honor, and silence have power. Together, residents built a new boat, the Liberty's Child, and a bench with the words, SIT. Remember. Thank. The story has become a symbol of quiet heroism, service, and the power of human memory. Welcome to my channel. You don't really expect a Wednesday morning to be the day everything shifts. But life doesn't wait for ceremony or symmetry, it just shows up with its sleeves rolled up, ready to wreck you when you least expect it. My name's Jack Merton. I'm 73, and I've lived in North Bay since the Nixon years. Small harbor town up the coast, once known for its cod and character, now mostly remembered for high-end resorts and wine tastings. They call this place the New Hamptons of the West, but I remember when you could get a fried haddock sandwich for $2 and everyone knew the boat you worked on by the pitch of its engine. Most mornings, I was out on the water before the gulls got noisy. My hands, these hands are more scar than skin now, but they still knew the lines, knew the throttle, knew every creak and hum of my boat. She was called Wind Mercy. Built her myself, plank by plank, the winter after I got back from Da Nang. Didn't talk much about the war, hell, didn't talk much at all, but working the wood helped me sleep through the noise that came home with me. Wind Mercy wasn't pretty. She wore her age, honestly, salt-shoed paint, deck boards that moaned like old knees, and a hull that had survived more squalls than most people I knew. She was mine. I'd always said the ocean was my church, and Wind Mercy was my pew. That morning, I'd left dock around 5, aiming to check the crab pots and maybe catch the sunrise from the mouth of the bay. She always looked her best in dawnlight, quiet, strong, dependable. I'd just finished tying her up when I heard the thrum. You know that sound. Not your average boat engine. It was deeper, arrogant, like a threat. I looked up, and there she was, Eclipse 1, a floating monstrosity of polished chrome and imported arrogance. New yacht in town, bigger than any we'd seen dock here. $2 million of ego on the water, and behind the wheel was Brandon Locke. You've probably heard of him. Tech startup wizard. 38. Bought up the Old Town Library just to convert it into a private gym. The Chamber of Commerce called him a blessing to our economy. I called him what I call any man who thinks the sea is something you buy. I waved. Tried to catch his attention. Raised both arms, signaled my position clear as day. He didn't slow. Hey, mooring here. I shouted, but it was useless. Engine noise drowned me out. Up top, I could see Locke and a group of well-dressed guests, flutes in hand, laughing like the world owed them joy. Either they didn't see me, or worse, they didn't care. The security boat was nearby. Officer Craig leaned on the rail, squinting at the scene unfolding like he was watching a TV show. No radio call, no horn, just slack-jawed watching. Then came the crunch. Eclipse 1 plowed into Wind Mercy's stern like she wasn't even there. The sound was like bone snapping. What exploded, the flagpole cracked, and I leapt for the dock just before her back gave out. She sank in less than 3 minutes. And as she went under, the American flag I'd flown every single day for 40 damn years slipped from its place and fell into the churn. Red stripes bleeding into the gray sea foam. Everything went quiet then, finally quiet. Locke's voice rang out from his deck like he was annoyed a bird pooped on his windshield. It's just an old fishing tub. Get over it. I stood there soaked with salt spray and 30 years of restraint. My knees screamed. My hands shook. But I didn't say a word. I waded to the edge, fished my flag out of the water, and held it close. People had gathered, joggers, dockhands, the usual morning walkers. Phones were up, of course. Some had that look on their faces, like they couldn't tell if they should be laughing or clapping. Not one stepped forward. The harbor cop finally walked up like he'd just remembered his job. Mr. Merton, I'll need to file a report. I didn't answer. Just held the wet flag, pressed it to my chest, and walked. Behind me, someone snickered. A notification pinged. Someone uploaded a video, probably titled it, Old Man Goes Titanic. By lunchtime, the bay was back to normal. The wreck cleared, the scandal forgotten. Just another piece of history swept under the tide. But something had shifted. Something deep. You can't tear a man's roots out without the ground remembering. I didn't go back to the dock that day. Hell, I didn't even go into town. Instead, I sat in the kitchen of my old saltbox house on Beacon Hill, quiet place with peeling white paint and a view that had once made people jealous before developers bought up the shoreline. The windows rattled in their frames from the offshore wind, but I didn't feel the cold. Not really. I was looking at the flag. Spread it out across the table, gently as if it were skin. The colors had bled together, edges torn. Still, it held. The house was full of ghosts that day. Not literal ones, but the kind that sit behind your shoulders and whisper things you can't ignore. I kept hearing the sound. The groan of wood breaking, the rush of water, that damned entitled laugh from the yacht's deck. A laugh like mine and my boat's shared past meant nothing at all. My grandson Miles was in town. 19, back from college for the summer. He showed up around dusk with a pizza and that eager look he always wears when he thinks he's about to fix something that can't be fixed. "Grandpa," he said, standing in the doorway, "you should sue the hell out of that guy." I didn't say anything, just kept my eyes on the flag. "He crushed your boat. The Wind Mercy. You spent your whole life on her." I nodded. "I did. He should pay for it. You should make him pay." "He didn't hit me," I said quietly. "He hit something nobody ever thought mattered." Miles looked at me like I'd just spoken in code. And maybe I had. Because to me, Wind Mercy wasn't just a boat. She was 40 years of memory, solitude, and healing. She was early mornings on a calm tide, dolphins surfing the bow wake, the slow rhythm of work that had made my hands strong and my thoughts quiet. But to the rest of the world, she was just some beat-up wooden hull in the way of progress. That night, I opened my old logbook. I'd written in it every day I was on the water, weather conditions, sea state, catch totals. It had become a sort of journal, though I never wrote about myself directly. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "First day without Wind Mercy. No condolences offered, but I can still hear the water calling." Then I turned on the local news. There he was. Locke, smiling into cameras, reporters gathered around him like moths to his artificial flame. They were celebrating his yacht's arrival. Largest private vessel to ever dock in North Bay, they called it. The anchor used words like milestone, evolution, economic growth. Not a single mention of the wreck. Not a whisper about what happened that morning. Online, the video of the collision had gone viral. I saw the comments. "That boat was an eyesore. Old guys need to move with the times. Get a modern boat or get out of the way." One read, "Boomer drama queen LOL." I turned the TV off. Later that night, the harbor master called. Told me, with the practiced neutrality of a man avoiding liability, that my vessel wasn't up to current standards. Said my lack of radar reflectors and lighting made it hard to detect. Said the insurance claim probably wouldn't go through. I didn't tell him about the inspections I'd passed every year. I didn't tell him about the grandfather clause. I just thanked him and hung up. What was the point? The sea had taken back what I'd borrowed, and I had no illusions about permanence. I was a guest on those waters. Always had been. But that night, as I stood on my porch, watching the harbor lights ripple across black water, the ache in my chest wasn't about lost lumber and paint. It was about the silence. About the erasure. It was about the fact that the only place I'd ever truly belonged, where the noise in my head dimmed, where the ghost quieted, was gone. And nobody seemed to notice. Except the sea. The sea remembered. The fog rolled in thick the next morning, one of those old-fashioned North Bay fogs that make everything seem quieter, like the town was holding its breath. You couldn't see more than 30 feet off the bluff. Even the harbor bell sounded muted. I was already on the porch, coffee going cold in my hand, wrapped in a wool sweater that smelled like cedar and old rain. No plan. No place to be. My hands felt too still. It had been 2 days since I'd been on the water. First time in 4 decades I didn't know what tide was coming in. I felt like a sailor who'd lost the stars. Then it came. Hunk, hunk, hunk. The harbor foghorn blasted 3 times, deep and long. The kind of signal I hadn't heard in years. Not a warning, not a passing freighter. This was different. I stood up so fast my knees barked. 3 long blasts meant large, incoming vessels. Military formation. And through the fog, like ghosts from another life, they appeared. 6 Navy ships, cutting through the mist like steel phantoms. No radio chatter. No local fanfare. No press. Just the quiet authority of purpose. American flags at half-mast on every masthead. My throat closed up. Word spread fast in North Bay. People poured down to the harbor like a tide of their own, store owners still in aprons, kids let out of summer programs early. Even the yacht club crowd paused their mimosa brunches and drifted down, puzzled and drawn. From my porch, I could see it all. The lead ship was a guided missile destroyer, sleek and purposeful. She docked with surgical precision. At her bow stood a man in dress whites, straight-backed and solemn. Rear Admiral Conrad Hale. I recognized him immediately, hadn't seen him in over 30 years, but you never forget the face of a man who once pulled you from fire. In his gloved hands, he held a triangle-folded flag. Pristine. Ceremonial. My knees didn't want to move, but I forced them. Down the hill. Through the gathering crowd that parted like mist around me. Whispers followed me. Jack Merton. What's going on? Who is he? Admiral Hale spotted me and stepped down the gangway. He snapped a perfect salute. Chief Bosun Merton, he said, voice carrying over the hushed harbor. Permission to come ashore and render honors. I hadn't heard that title in 40 years. I returned the salute, hand trembling slightly. Permission granted, Admiral. What followed didn't feel real. A color guard stepped forward. 6 ships' worth of sailors stood at attention, eyes forward, saluting the shore. Hale spoke into a wireless mic that echoed through portable speakers set up by his staff. 45 years ago, during a monsoon in the South China Sea, this man saved the lives of 134 sailors aboard the USS Newlands. When the hull ruptured and toxic steam filled the engine room, Chief Merton sealed it with his own hands. He suffered burns, broken ribs, permanent lung damage. He asked for no commendation, only that we look after the families of the ones who didn't make it. I looked down, at my boots, at the salt-stained concrete. Anything to avoid the weight of all those eyes. He built a boat with those same hands. He lived quietly, served without recognition, and lost his vessel without justice. But the sea remembers, and so do we. A young sailor stepped forward, holding a plaque made from an old bronze plate. On it, etched in sharp Navy script, were the words, "For the man who stood the watch long after the uniform came off. The sea remembers. The Navy never forgets." I couldn't speak. I just took it, nodded, and felt the kind of silence that doesn't ache, it heals. Someone in the crowd was live-streaming. I saw the red light on their phone. A video that had once mocked an old man in his wreck was now joined by another with a new tag. #salute the chief. And that tag, apparently, spread faster than the yacht owner's champagne video ever did. For once, the internet got something right. After the ceremony, something shifted in the town. You could feel it in the way folks looked at me, different now. Like the fog had cleared from more than just the harbor. Strangers I'd passed for years without a nod now tipped their hats. A few even shook my hand, eyes full of something they didn't have words for. Maybe guilt, maybe gratitude, maybe both. That night, I sat on my porch and stared out at the slip where Wind Mercy used to rock quietly in the breeze. The empty space felt like a hole in the world. Miles came by again, this time quieter. He sat next to me, didn't say much for a while. Then he said, "It's not right. What that man did." I nodded, still watching the water. "He should pay," Miles said again, quieter this time. "He needs to." I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up, walked inside, and pulled down the old service flag from above the fireplace. The one they gave me the day I was discharged. Still crisp, still folded tight in its perfect triangle. I brought it out and laid it across the porch railing, letting the ocean wind touch it again. A small ceremony, just between me and the sea. The next day, something happened I didn't expect. Brandon Locke showed up. No entourage, no press, just him. Looking every bit the man who'd never had to apologize for anything in his life, and now didn't quite know how. He stood at the edge of the dock while I showed a bunch of local kids how to tie a proper cleat hitch. He waited. Let me finish. Then he said, "Mr. Merton, I came to apologize." I stood slowly, wiped my hands on my jeans. "I behaved badly," he continued. Arrogantly. And I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what that boat meant. I just looked at him. Didn't nod. Didn't speak. Let the silence do the talking. Locke took an envelope from his coat and held it out. "There's a blank check in here. Write whatever number you think is fair. For the boat. For the disrespect. For all of it." I glanced at the envelope, then back at him. "That's not what I need." He frowned. "Then tell me what would make it right." I thought about that for a long moment, then said, "There's a spot on the eastern pier. Faces the sunrise. I want you to put a bench there. Good solid one. Teak, if you can find it. Carve 3 words into it." He blinked. "What 3 words?" I looked out at the bay. "Sit. Remember. Thank." He stared at me like I'd given him a puzzle with only half the pieces. "That's it?" he asked finally. "Just a bench." "Sometimes," I said, "what people need most is a place to stop and remember what matters." 2 days later, A master woodworker arrived from Seattle. Spent the whole day shaping a perfect bench from hand-picked teak. Locke showed up too, rolled up his sleeves, helped carry planks, sanded the armrests. Got blisters for his trouble. The 3 words were inlaid in bronze. Sit. Remember. Thank. No grand plaque. No QR code for tourists. Just a seat, facing the harbor, where an old boat used to rest. People started stopping there. Tourists. Locals. A couple of veterans even brought their coffee and sat for a while in the mornings. Some left notes. Some left flowers. The bench became a place. A quiet, reverent place. Not a monument, just a reminder that maybe respect isn't about noise. It's about presence. A week passed. Then 2. The world moved on, as it always does. But something in North Bay had changed, subtle as the turn of tide. Tourists still came, sure, but now they paused at the eastern pier. They read the words. They sat. And maybe, just maybe, they thought a little harder about what it meant to live quietly and serve deeply. I had settled into a new rhythm, no longer rising before dawn to cast off lines, but still waking early. Teaching the dock kids rope work, sometimes sharing a story when the fog made everything feel like a memory. That's when it happened. Late afternoon, sky gold and silver, gulls wheeling low. I was sipping coffee on the pier when I heard an engine, small, familiar, but new. The kind of sound a boat makes when it's built by hands that care more about craft than flash. I turned. Coming into the harbor was a wooden boat. Classic lines. High bow. Painted navy blue with white trim so fresh it sparkled. Her name was stenciled on the side in careful letters. Liberty's Child. I stood, coffee forgotten. Miles was at the helm, grinning wide. Surprise, Grandpa. Behind him, folks waved from the dock, local vets, fishermen, shipwrights, people I hadn't seen together in one place since the town's 4th of July parade 10 years back. I took a step forward, heart thudding. What is this? Miles drew a line to a dockhand and hopped down. We built her. Based on your plans, I found them in the shed. Everyone pitched in. The Boat Builders Association, some Navy guys from out of state, even the high school shop class. Took us 3 weeks. She's not exactly the Wind Mercy, but... I was already aboard, hands tracing the smooth rails, the perfect finish on the wheel. She smelled of pine, varnish, and home. Miles climbed back up and joined me. We added modern safety gear. Better NAV system. But the heart of it? That's all yours. At the bow, a brand new American flag snapped in the breeze. I had no words. Only the sudden clarity of a memory. Me, 33, standing barefoot on my first boat's deck as the tide rolled in. Back then, I thought freedom was something you earned once and carried forever. Now I knew better. Freedom is something you give back to. Something you steward. And this vessel, Liberty's Child, was the town's way of telling me they'd remembered. That evening, I took her out for a trial run. Miles came along. So did a few of the dock kids. We didn't go far, just to the harbor mouth where Wind Mercy used to linger at dawn. The water was like glass. The sky burned copper. For the first time in weeks, the ache in my chest softened. The ghost of the old boat was still with me. Yes, but now she had a successor. Not a replacement. A continuation. And in that moment, I knew. You can lose the vessel, but you don't have to lose the voyage. Word of Liberty's Child spread fast. First around the harbor, then the town, then far beyond. A local news crew did a story. The footage made it to national TV. The headline read, "Town rebuilds war veteran's boat in act of collective grace." I didn't watch it. Didn't need to. What mattered came in the days after. People began treating the harbor like something sacred. Kids came down after school not to kill time, but to learn. They asked about knots, tides, how to read clouds. They listened like it mattered, like it all meant something. And then Admiral Hale returned. No fanfare. Civilian clothes. Just a cup of coffee in hand. We sat on the bench overlooking the dock. He said, "Secretary of the Navy wants you involved. There's a youth program, sailing, navigation, conservation. We need instructors who know more than manuals." I laughed. I'm a tired old man with a rebuilt boat and a bad back. He shrugged. The kids don't seem to mind. I looked out at the pier, where Miles was showing a girl how to tie a bowline. She looked back at me, smiling like she already knew the answer. "All right," I said. "I'm in. Part-time." The Admiral just nodded, like he'd expected nothing less. That night, I wrote in the logbook. Wind Mercy's spirit sails on. Same hands. New wood. A week later, he came back. Brandon Locke. No cameras this time. No press release. Just him, hands in his pockets, sunglasses pushed up on his head like he wasn't sure what to do with himself. I was coiling lines near the dock. He waited, good sign. I came to say thanks, he said. For not taking the check. For the bench. I nodded. It's getting use. He looked out at it. That bench is getting more visitors than my whole yacht. Silence stretched between us. For once, he didn't try to fill it. I wanted to ask something, he said at last. That day, when the boat sank, why didn't you fight back? Go after me? Call the press. I took a breath. Because I've seen enough wreckage. And because sometimes, letting people see their own reflection in still water says more than shouting ever could. He nodded slowly. I've done a lot of reflecting lately. I believed him. Before he left, he asked, can I donate to that youth program you're part of? I gave him a long look. You're welcome to help. But don't do it for a headline. He smiled. I won't. And for the first time, I believed that too. The program launched fast. Kids from up and down the coast came in, some shy, some loud, all curious. We taught them to read charts, tie knots, respect the sea. And the sea, like it always does, tested them. One morning, a squall blew in while we were out past the jetty. I saw the fear in their eyes. I also saw something else, trust. Not just in the boat, or the ropes, but in the quiet old man at the helm. When we docked, soaked but safe, one of the boys clapped me on the back and said, you made it feel like we couldn't fail. I didn't reply. Just smiled, handed him the line, and let him tie us off. Word kept spreading. Donations came in. Equipment. Volunteers. Even the skeptical ones came around after seeing what those kids brought home: confidence, peace, stories they couldn't stop telling. The pier got busier, but not louder. Respect grew where there had once been only wealth and speed. The bench became something of a landmark. Flowers showed up there. Notes. One was taped under the seat. To the man who helped me believe quiet isn't weakness. I left it there. One quiet morning, Miles brought me a small wrapped box. Something you might want, he said. Inside was a polished brass plate. Wind Mercy, 1975 to 2023. Carried one soul and many lessons. We can mount it on Liberty's child, he said. I ran my fingers over the letters. My throat tightened. Let's do it. We fixed it near the helm, just under the wheel. Not flashy. Just true. That afternoon, I took her out solo for the first time. The water was calm. Dolphins followed the bow for a bit, same as they always had. I smiled. Out at the harbor mouth, I cut the engine. Let the sea rock me. From that spot, you could see everything. The pier, the bench, the kids running lines, Locke's big yacht anchored far off, strangely quiet. I lowered the flag to half-mast for a moment. Not for mourning, but for memory. Then raised it again. Some things aren't meant to stay under. Some things rise. A year passed. The youth program became part of the town. Local papers wrote about it. Not just the kids learning to sail, but what they were learning about respect, patience, service. They called it Merton's legacy. I told them legacies were for people trying to be remembered. I was just trying to pass something on. Miles got accepted into the Coast Guard Academy. I didn't cry, not then. But I kept his acceptance letter in the old logbook. The bench still stands. Teak darkening from the sea air, bronze letters weathered but firm. Sit. Remember. Thank. Every week, someone leaves something there. A photo. A coin. Once, a kid's drawing of a boat, scribbled in crayon with the name Wind Mercy on the side. That one I took home. I don't sail as far these days. The hands aren't what they were. But I still rise early. Still listen to the sea. And every so often, I find myself whispering to the wind. I remember you. Thank you. Because the truth is, I never wanted a statue, or a parade, or a headline. Just this. A bench. A boat. And the kind of silence that means someone finally understood what mattered.